It's stage 15 of the Giro d'Italia as the riders work their way from Cesanet Torinese to Les Granges du Galibier. They're on the lower slopes of the Telegraph, Col du Telegraph, as the riders are pushing now out of the peloton, and there's also been a split up front in the breakaway. The breakaway riders with less than 2 minutes advantage now over the peloton, led by the Astana squad of the Magliarosa Vincenzo Nibali, sitting a few positions back from the very front as their riders toil away in the break up front. They've been out there for quite a while now. And Miguel Angel Rubiana Chavez is towards the front, but I do believe that there are a couple of riders ahead. Stefano Perazzi attacked a little while ago from the break. And meanwhile, out of the front of the peloton, we saw just a few moments ago that Robert Hessink and Peter Stetina and de Grief of Lotto Belisol had decided to try their chances. Still a long way to go to the summit of the Telegraph, after which we have the climb up the Galibier. And the action is starting to hot up as the break works away to try and maintain this advantage over the peloton. Is it a forlorn cost? And look at this, Robert Hessink has decided to really push on. Peter Stetina can't handle the pace. Francis de Grief is struggling to get into the wheel, and this is a big push from Robert Hessink. Suffered yesterday, has to try something, and has really gone for it today, Sean.
Yes, he's gone for it, but at this point with the peloton just 150 metres in the distance there, it's going to be impossible for him, because he'll not be allowed to ride away. And the way it's rolling at the moment, you know, you make that big effort here to get very little of an advantage. And you know, this climb, it's a long one, the Telegraph, and then we go down 4 kilometres, and then we start the climb to the Galibier. It's not going to, you know, give him anything here, and we can see he's joined by Martinez from the Escatel team. And he's probably, you know, really disappointed with his performance yesterday, and you know, trying to make up something, but I don't think he's going to gain anything at this moment.
Martinez has managed to latch onto the wheel of Robert Hessink, but Hessink is on a solo run, totally focused on his own performance at the moment. Peter Stetina, who riding for Garmin Sharp, left the group with Hessink, and de Grief is no longer able to follow the pace. Meanwhile, riders are dispensing with cotton caps, dispensing with all sorts of extra clothing that they had brought with them. It's all about climbing, more or less, with just a few short kilometres of descending between the Col de Telegraph and the Galibier coming up at the end of this stage. Buongiorno now is struggling off the back. He made a big push to try and set it up for his teammate Perazzi to attack. Perazzi has been dragged back by the rest of the break. Chalaput is struggling a little bit with the pace, and Perazzi is attempting to control the pace of Peter Weening, who looks full of legs today, the man from Arica Greenedge, who was attacking on the descent of the first climb of Col du Mont-Cenis. And now Perazzi goes again. Visconti spinning as lower gear as he can possibly manage, not able to go with it. Rabatini too is struggling, and Perazzi attacks again and drags Peter Weening with him. This is all the action at the very front of the group, and Perazzi is desperate to try and get to the top of the Telegraph ahead of the peloton. It looks like it's going to be very difficult for him to do it, but his ambition is to be applauded as himself and Weening get together, have a little word, and Weening is really making Perazzi suffer as they go through that little right-hand turn.
And working well together. And the Col de Telegraph, 22.9 kilometres to the finish, so they're not that far out, around the 3 kilometre mark, and they could have, you know, they could hold on here. Weening is looking real good as well. He's taking, you know, a lot of the pulling, the pace setting on the front, and of course Perazzi is going to, you know, give it his best here, because he can take some really valuable points for the mountain competition, and his teammate, you know, set it up. He just did all he could and then just peels off and loses contact with the group.
Well, Hessink looks very comfortable indeed, because he's sitting in the wheel of Egon Martinez of the Euskaltel squad, the super experienced Spanish rider. And Hessink is able to take off his helmet, adjust his sunglasses, put it on, make sure you get the strap right, and all the while hands off the bars and still able to cover the pace that Martinez is setting, and they're opening up a decent advantage over the peloton. Just how much rope will the Astana team give them before they light the afterburners and really go for it on the Telegraph? Of course, with the Galibier to come after that, they might just sit there for a little while and let Gesink have a decent advantage. How long before they start to make moves? And moves are coming thick and fast from the peloton. Eno's pushing, as we saw yesterday. Sergio Eno slipped to 13th overall, now 7 minutes and 6 seconds behind Vincenzo Nibali on the overall standings. And Eno's decided to step out of the bunch. Narrow advantage still, and other riders seeing the opportunity perhaps to get into something serious. Now let's get a side of Eno as he makes his departure, watched by the Astana team. Sky played the card again. Kieselowski, super performance from him yesterday as well. He's sitting 12th overall, right there for Radio Shack Leopard.
And all the men further down in general classification, they can see Gesink moving out of the group with De Grief was already out of that peloton, so they say, well, I'm going to try something here and try and form a group. But again, we can see Astana, yes, they're just setting a pace on the front of the peloton here. They will just keep this advantage, without allowing it to grow out to be a big amount, and then on the final climb it's going to be so difficult. Riders like De Grief and riders who are a long ways down in the general classification, they should be really getting into the breaks on days when it's really difficult. I don't think they're going to gain any time here today, and any possibility of moving up general classification.
So less than 20 seconds for these three riders that have forged clear of the peloton, the group of the general classification riders. De Grief looks as if he's suffering a little bit in the wheels of Robert Kieselowski and Sergio Eno. Eno of the Sky Pro Cycling squad. Pushing clear, and that's a much reduced peloton. It's been whittled down rider by rider. There's riders all over the road on the lower slopes of the Telegraph in the Alps today. Lots of riders suffering with the pace up front and at the back. Pirazzi is once more joined by Peter Weening, and Visconti has just tapped out a steady rhythm as fast as he could go, but not willing to make any peaks. And Rabatini too has managed to get back in and involved. So 4 riders joined at the front. And Martinez suggests to Robert Hessink, maybe we just calm it down a bit, and said Hessink has a little look. Well, what was that look all about?
Well, I think Igor Martinez may be saying to Gesink not to be given sudden accelerations, as we can see more attacks here on the bunch now. This is going to be an interesting one, because with the riders getting out there who are down further in the general classification, more than seeing the opportunity maybe and trying to get across to this group of Gesink, Martinez and a number of other ones.
So lots of activity at the front of the peloton. But in the wheel of the Astana riders, sitting pretty and sitting in a very confident position at the moment, is the race leader Vincenzo Nibali. As the riders from the breakaway inside the final 25 kilometres. For Pirazzi, though, the major ambition is to try and make it to the top of the Telegraph and score some points towards the mountains competition. Now, attacks coming from the peloton from AG2R. Is this Betancourt?
Hubert Dupont, first man out, I think.
He's normally, yeah.
We've seen it before where they just put a rider out there to keep on this attacking on the front of the bunch, and that's what AG2R need, to make the race that bit more aggressive for their two better climbers, Betancourt and Pozzovivo.
And it's super to see so much activity so early in this stage. It's not a case of just setting a tempo on the lower slopes of the Telegraph and just grinding everyone into submission all the way to the top of the Galibier. Lots of attacks coming thick and fast.
De Luca also trying to slip away there in that group with the AG2R rather.
And here we get a replay of Martinez suggesting that they calm the pace a little bit and see who's coming up to them. Hessink though has a little look across, and we're not going to get a replay of that look. Meanwhile up front, Pirazzi setting the tempo. Peter Weening sits in his wheel, as does Visconti and Rabatini. And now Astana unmoved and seemingly unaffected in any way by what's happening ahead of them. Danilo De Luca, the old stager for Vinny Fantini. As now Hessink and Martinez are about to be joined by Sergio Eno. Robert Kizerlovsky in his wheel for Radio Shack. And lots of people said after yesterday's stage that that was the one bad day that Robert Hessink often suffers in Grand Tours. Well, he's out to prove everyone wrong and say that it was just a little blip on the graph and that I'm capable of so much more. And great to see the fighting spirit from the Dutchman. Robert Hessink, Kizerlovsky, Ego and Martinez, and at the front, as I said, Hessink was there. Now Danilo De Luca on his own and pushing on. The stocky style of the Vinny Fantini man, the self-styled killer, as we see Vincenzo Nibali, and on his right shoulder, as we've seen him for so much of this Giro d'Italia, Cadel Evans. Nibali decides to move up towards the front for a little bit of a conversation. It just shows how easily that he's moving. Pace not affecting him in any great way at the moment. So up front, 1 minute and 35 seconds for these four riders chasing them. Hessink leading them. It's Visconti on the front of the leaders group. And the Astana lieutenants of Vincenzo Nibali that control the pace in the peloton behind. Danilo De Luca looks like he's going to make it up to the Robert Hessink-led group. Visconti's moved ahead. He's decided that he's had enough, and that's interesting because Pirazzi looked to be so confident and going so well, and Visconti was not seduced by the attacks of Pirazzi. He just tapped out his own steady rhythm, and now he finds that he's in a stronger position.
And of course Pirazzi, we've seen him a number of times when he gets away with a group. He is you know, a very difficult rider to follow the lines because he gives these sudden accelerations, as we see again. He's just going to give another one here to get back up to Visconti, and we did see Visconti on the earlier part of the climb. He lost a little bit of ground, got into his rhythm, and that's what you have to do if you're not a real good climber. And Pirazzi is the one who can really break your legs. He can really blow you up if you try and follow him in the attacks, and he seems to be in a bit of difficulty now as we see another Movistar rider leaving the peloton.
It's Herrada. Of course, they're thinking in terms of Beñat and Schausti, sitting 10th overall, Sean.
Possibly, yes. To have a man up the road if he's going to try and do something and get out of the peloton a bit later, that could be the tactic. But again, if he's feeling good with the situation they're in, he's not really in a position at the moment that they're going to be trying to conserve. They're going to try and improve that or anything, and if they've got men who are capable, well, why not get them up the road? There's so many men out here in front anyway in different groups, you might as well have a go and see what happens.
So Hessink, Ena Kizerlovsky and Ego Martinez are about to be joined by Danilo De Luca, and they had picked up the man from Bardiani Valvoli, Buongiorno. How much longer can he hang on out there? Visconti looks very, very controlled at the moment as Hessink gets out of the saddle. And Rubiano Chavez has a little look to his left as he sees the big men of GC. And a little bit of encouragement for Danilo De Luca from his fellow countryman there. Francesco Bongiorno, on different teams, but they've seen of each other racing, and obviously big support.
They must be neighbours.
Yeah, they must be in there. He was just handing him a gel or something. And de Grief of Lotto Belisol is struggling. The Astana team looks oh so controlled at the moment.
The two same riders from Astana, been on the front for quite a long time now. We see Agnoli there on the front, and Aru just on his wheel, and just tapping out a good pace, not allow this group of riders further down general classification to take any major advantage, and then on the final climb, you know, I think they can take them back in again.
So just over 1.5 minutes for the leading group up front, with Visconti ploughing ahead alone, and he has just over, as I say, 1.5 minutes advantage over the group coming up behind, led by Robert Hessink. Visconti looking good. Can he hang on at least till the top of the telegraph, and then perhaps be picked up by one or two of the leading lights of general classification, and maybe get involved for a good finish? It's a big ask for him, but certainly it's been a good Giro as well for him so far, and Visconti is putting it up to them. Hessink has big ambitions, and De Luca looks as if he's struggling a little bit with the pace. That friendly little handsling he got from Bongiorno hasn't, the effects of it haven't lasted for very long. And now Herrada picking up Ben Gaspar, the Luxembourg rider. And what's going through Vincenzo Nibali's mind at the moment, Sean? Is he, you know, what's he? I mean, how is he working it out? And you know, is he not concerned by the likes of Hessink heading up the road?
No, I don't think there's any concern there. You know, they have it under control with you know, you've 3 teammates there. The 2 of them just sharing the work on the front, and they're just going to allow Guessing to, you know, hang out there, leave him take a minute and a half, but then on the final climb you could, you know, pull that back when the action starts, and there will be action, because there's a lot of riders in here now who feel at 2.5 minutes, a fraction over in the peloton, they'll be able to close that down on the final climb up to the finish, and he's going to react to those danger men, and you know, the more danger men are, you know, like Betancourt for example, he's very dangerous in the general classification. Sant'Ambrogio, Scarponi, Nimonek, all of those riders. Cadel Evans, of course, he's a real danger man. He's not going to get any distance on Nibali at all. The moment he goes, he'll be immediately in the wheel, and just allow your team to control it for the moment, depending on your feel as well. If you're feeling good, as Nibali have been feeling in all of this race, the legs are feeling good, well then, you know, you just concentrate and work to a tactic and control the situation as they're doing at the moment. If you're not feeling good, well then there's all sorts of things going through your mind. Wonder how the other riders are feeling, what should I do if somebody attack. But at the moment I don't think there's any major problem for Nibali or for Astana team.
So Herrada has dropped Ben Gaspar, who left the peloton for AG2R, and Herrada strikes on alone as de Grief has been dragged back by the Astana-led group, and one wonders how much longer he'll be able to last in it. Has he been able to take a little breather as he realised he wasn't able to follow the pace of Hessink, Henao, etc. Betancourt and Pozzovivo in line astern for AG2R. And they have Hubert Dupont pacing them in the group, just behind that rider from Katusha. There's a few Lampreys in there. Astana's on the front. Hessink shows the pain. And 3 kilometers to the GPM point, we just went through there, so
it's looking good for the mountain classification men. Perazzi is going to normally take some very valuable points here for this overall classification in the mountains, and you know, he's really performing well, and he's getting into the breaks at the right time, you know, doing a really good job and marking up quite substantial amount of points when he doesn't get in the breaks.
Ed Wells is asking on Twitter to @DQ Sport, how hard will riders press on the descent between the Telegraph and the Galibier?
Well, I don't think they will press that much, because you know, you still have a long climb. It's not the case if it's just a 2 or 3 kilometre after the descent of the Telegraph. You have a long climb up to the finish today, and it's not a technical one either. It's pretty straightforward, so I don't think there'll be anything gained or lost between the groups that are out right in front or the groups that will be out in front when we get to the top of the Telegraph. And it's not as if it's, you know, a 20 kilometre descent where, yes, you could make up a lot of time if you're a really good ascender and take a lot of risks, but here it's only a 4 kilometre descent and not majorly technical.
So 1:45 from our lone leader, Giovanni Visconti of the Movistar squad, who's pressing on alone, having been part of a 7-man group at one stage. Herrada, his teammate, is also alone on the mountain ahead of the general classification group and chasing the group led by Robert Hessink and Sergio Henao. And that is the Maglia Rosa group. In fourth in place in line there is Vincenzo Nibali. Vinny Fantini's in there, then the Lampreys. Michele Scarponi leading his teammate Przemysław Niemiec, and they're 5th and 6th on general classification respectively. Hubert Dupont shows that perhaps he's feeling the is he feeling the ascent a little bit. He's quite a bit ahead of his two teammates in the group though, so perhaps it's not going that bad. There's the scene on the Alps today at the finish line in the Galibier. There's snow awaiting these riders, but they'll be feeling lots of heat at the moment. So Herrada has a shrinking advantage, now less than 30 seconds. Visconti, though, his teammate up front, is going to get the mountains points. Will he? Will he be able to hang on to the top? And it could well be something he's looking at. He did, of course, lead the mountains classification for the first few days of the race. Then Stefano Perazzi took it up. Visconti's sitting 6th in the mountains classification at the moment. It's going to be really tough for him to get right up there. 16 points just. Would take 15 points on offer at the top of the Telegraph if he can manage it. Would at least put him back into the top 3. So for Visconti, there's more than just pride at stake here, or even perhaps the tiny belief that he can hang on to the end of the stage. There is the hard currency of points for the King of the Mountains classification. I think taps out a steady rhythm. Henao has a little look behind to see, is anyone going to take it up? What's Henao thinking there? Is he trying to drag a couple of them out the back, or is he just not able to follow, not happy with that pace?
Well, it's surprising that he's looking about there, and it looks like that he just wants everybody to contribute, and it's possibly the tactic as well. He doesn't want to ride too far away, but that's not going to be the problem, I think. As we can see here, you know, the group out front around the 30 seconds of an advantage. The Perazzi group I'm talking on, and this group is about 30 seconds adrift further down here, but. It looks like Henao is just sitting back for the moment. What is the tactic here? Because we would expect him to push on, try and get to the final climb, and then wait for orders from the team director.
Interesting moments there as Hessink piles on the pressure. Kieselowski and Egon Martinez seemed comfortable with covering it. Danilo De Luca is alive to the danger as Henao drops to the back of the group and decides not to freewheel just for a little bit. And then it's Henao that drags the riders back up there. So they're all as one again. Less than a minute ahead of the main peloton. Herrada is chasing. He's got half a minute advantage over the peloton. And Herrada, of course, who could well be thinking of the performance of his team leader, Beñat Inchausti. Plenty of reasons for Movistar to show ambition on this Col du Telegraph. 10th position for Beñat Inchausti at the moment, 5 minutes and 51 seconds in arrears. But a good result in the offing for the Spaniard as we hit the final 20 kilometres of stage 15 of Giro d'Italia. Now Lampre Merida decide to take up the chase, perhaps a little concerned with the advantage that Robert Hessink has managed to forge. Meanwhile up front, Visconti coming towards the top of the Col du Telegraph to take the mountains points on offer, and holding an advantage of almost 3 minutes on the main peloton, so it's a super effort. Giovanni Visconti, it's actually 9 points on offer. It's a second category climb. So he moves on to 25 points and moves into the top 4 from 6th in the mountains competition. How much longer can he hold on? I think he's really thinking about stage honours today. And he's given himself a racer's chance of going for it. Now Perazzi goes to try and jump ahead of Peter Weening. Perazzi gains the advantage and will hang on to score important points. And they're not that far behind Visconti. .45 seconds, 47 seconds down on Visconti, so you know, it's not a major problem yet, and you know, we see Perazzi that he's going to push on again, and he will be wondering now, can they stay on? But I don't think you know, it's going to be possible with this group behind, working well together. But again, they haven't a great advantage, and when you see the, you know, back to the main bunch, 2:56. 3 minutes at the bottom of the climb for anybody, unless there's somebody in the group. Haino is the one, I think. He seems to be just you know, working the other riders and trying to get everybody to contribute. He's not prepared to pull along here, and I don't think we have seen the end of him yet. I think when we get on the final climb, he could be the danger man, could, you know, really push on. Yeah, playing little games halfway up the hill, seems comfortable enough with the pace. He was impressive as Rubiano Chavez because he was dropped by his breakaway companions, and now he's going to lead this group over the top of the climb. Interesting decision from Rubiano Chavez, who'd been caught by the Hessink group, and Hessink just decides he's not going to go into the red just to lead them over the top. And now we've got Herrada, who's now within 10 seconds of the Hessink group and making excellent progress, and surely it won't be long before he's with them. It would not be too difficult for him to get to the group before they get to the Galibier. So Herrada has given him a chance of getting involved in the shake-up of this race too, and he's a very useful man to have up front for Beñat Inchausti. So AG Tour riders, that's Ben Gestauer, who has not been able to follow the other riders up front, and he's been reeled in by the Lampre Merida and Astana-led peloton. And they're just under 3 minutes behind Visconti at the top of the Col du Telegraph. Mark Sharon wants to know where Perazzi is. Well, Perazzi is just under a minute behind Visconti. Small group of riders. Gastauer takes the opportunity to get some food in. What does he have in the tank? There's the scene on the Col du Galibier as the Giro d'Italia heads towards the big mountain. That's been such a fabled part of Tour de France history over the years. And not everyone's really suffering the cold. In the snow near the Pantani monument. 2,300 metres for the riders within 15 kilometres of the finish. So the question is, can Giovanni Visconti manage to hang on, Sean? Still willing to risk a fiver on it?
I don't think he will hang on when you consider the climb they have to get up here. You know, there's a lot of riders back here in the chasing group first of all, but the main peloton, I don't think all the shouting is over back there yet, and there is riders who will try and, you know, push on in the earlier part, and this advantage you know, will come down very quickly, especially to Visconti. But the group of chasers, possibly there's some riders in there, and we see Henyo, he looks to be comfortable. Guessing also looks to be quite good, but he's putting in a lot of work, and you know, if he can continue on doing that on the final climb of the day, which is, you know, a good 15 kilometres when it starts to kick up, or, you know, you could count maybe 18 kilometres, because it does from Valor, it starts to go up very gradually, but when you get, you know, a bit further up, then at the 15 kilometre mark, that's where it really starts to go uphill, and the percentage is quite steep, and it's a long climb, and I think we will see some of the riders here in this chasing group of guessing getting into difficulty, but back in the bunch, I don't think they're going to sit back and, you know, just allow this breakaway to stay out in front that easy.
So Giovanni Visconti now on the lower slopes of the Galibier. That little descent is done, and the benefit of it is completed. And Visconti will attempt to hang on in front of that group. They were chasing hard, and we saw one of the AG2R riders now going back to the car. And that's definitely not a time for this to happen. Probably a better time than it will be when they get to the Galibier, but still he'll hope to get serviced and get back up to the group as quickly as possible. And the AG2R car is a long, long way down. Question earlier, how many cars have they got? They've got two per team in the cavalcade behind, and if one of your riders ends up in the break, then you can call one car up there. One car will stay with the peloton. Now Visconti settles himself into the slog to the top of this hill. Well, not quite to the top, but to the finish line, which is at the Pantani monument. Les Granges du Galibier. As he leaves Valois behind. Just under 14 kilometres of climbing left for him. Maximum slope of 11%, I can tell you, and that happens very, very close to the finish line. So it's an average of 6%, but this is a tough climb, Sean, as you well know.
Yes, it is a tough one, and you know, it's one that's going to cause a lot of problems for some of the riders. I think back in the main peloton, it would be interesting to see at what point they will attack. Will they, you know, start going a bit earlier? And the advantage out in front, that's where the riders that are thinking of stage victory and the real good climbers, Pozzovivo, Betancourt, those ones are, you know, going to make the calculation. We might have to attack a bit earlier because of a breakaway out in front, and that's going to be the difficult thing for, you know, back in the peloton. There's a lot of riders going to have you know, difficulty following if that is the case, but you know, we'll have to wait and see what the action of the main bunch will be as we come on to the more steeper sections.
So the Hessing group behind gets the opportunity to see on the big screen the race leader Giovanni Visconti on slow-mo as he chases behind. But for Hessing, it's less about stage honours and more about the job of trying to stay ahead and gain some time back on the Astana-led peloton. Second group on the road now, just under a minute behind Giovanni Visconti. Peter Weening set a savage pace on that descent and put Stefano Perazzi into a little bit of trouble, but then as the road starts to rise again, Weening dragging a big gear. Lampre have put Startoni on the front to set the early agenda. What have Michele Scarponi and Przemysław Niemiec got on offer today for Vincenzo Nibali and the Astana team? Perazzi and Weening, and Rabatini fancies his chances. Rabatini had been dropped a while ago, managed to get back up to them, and he's decided to go for glory. Can he get across on his own to Giovanni Visconti? Here's the second man on the road for Vinny Fantini, Matteo Rabottini. And Weening grinds his way back up to the back wheel of the Vinny Fantini man, shaking his head. Oh no, he's just nodding his way around the board, indicating the time gap. It's gone back out to a minute as these riders have hit the really steep slope. Visconti looks very, very strong indeed. He's doing a great job. 2 minutes and 11 seconds to the third group on the road, which of course is the one led by Robert Hessink. And what advantage do they now enjoy over the Astana squad and the main peloton?
Surprising, the advantage of the peloton has grown out a bit. We see there some time ago it was around the 5-minute mark, and I thought it would be coming down, but it's actually have grown out a bit. So it's a surprising advantage considering we see back in the peloton Lampre and Merida pushing on here, but the other teams, you know, I thought they would see a bit more of them, like AG2 Le Mondial. They did start riding earlier on. I'm surprised they're not having somebody on the front of the bunch to keep the pace a bit higher and not allow the breakaway to, you know, get too much of an advantage, because if they're thinking of a stage victory, well then, you know, they have to start doing it in the earlier part, and it would be a bit easier to do it on the easier slopes, but maybe they will, you know, on the first sections of the difficult parts of the climb here, they will start putting on the pace.
Stuart Cook reckons that Rigoberto Urán is going to jump soon. It's going to come sometime. How much longer will he leave it? Well, he'll only jump if he's able to. If Astana are setting a pace that makes it difficult, well, Rigoberto Urán will be hoping he's recovered from his efforts yesterday on the Jaffro and is able to make a big contribution. So there's confirmation of the time gap now. .34 seconds. It's not a lot of time at all for Robert Hessink, considering how hard he's been pushing. And now we see as Betancourt goes to the front and the big guns are starting to fire. Evgeny Petrov.
And also 2:52 back to the race leader jersey. We see just some time ago it posted up 5 minutes, so that was a mistake there. And I was wondering how it went out from just under 4 minutes, so that was just an error there. And we can see now it's more like 3 minutes 2:49. That's what I was expecting it to be, and we can see a lot of attacks here in the front of the peloton.
Yeah, Rafael Majka has been paced away from the peloton, and Betancourt fancies that one. He's had a little look as Evgeny Petrov sets the pace on the front for his team leader. Rafael Majka wearing the white jersey of the leader of the young rider classification, and Carlos Betancourt of the AG2R Le Mondial squad has latched onto that one. Still Astana set the pace, and they're not about panicking at the moment. The intermediate sprint points are about to be mopped up by Giovanni Visconti. Up front now 45 seconds between himself and the three riders chasing behind, with Peter Weening and Rabottini setting the pace. And Weening doesn't seem all that happy with the contribution of Stefano Perazzi, and Rabottini takes the opportunity to attack, and much to Weening's absolute disgust, and he's going to say to Perazzi, well, you're going to have to chase it now. So an interesting piece of opportunism there by Matteo Rabottini, as Peter Weening became more and more dissatisfied with the contribution of Stefano Perazzi. Hubert Dupont now on the wheel of Michele Scarponi. Plenty of AG2R riders to the front, to the fore. Have Astana shot their bolt? That's the question. Or are they just waiting and watching? Scarponi fancied having a look at that one, as Jose Serpa attempts to help his team leader onto the tail of that group. And Rafael Maica in second position there. Betancourt has a little look over his shoulder, and that was just a little bit of early skirmishing amongst the leaders of the general classification in this group. Seventh position there in the pink jersey of race leader with the pale blue shorts. That's Vincenzo Nibali, holding a watching brief at the moment. No radical change in the time gaps between them at the moment. 45 seconds back to Rabottini from the race leader Giovanni Visconti. Less than 20 seconds now between the Hessink group and the riders chasing behind as a result of that little bit of animation by the team Saxo Tinkoff. And as they get higher, now they're beginning to hit the cold weather, and even at the levels of intensity that they're showing, they'll be starting to feel the cold just a little bit. Rafael Maica really has been a revelation in this year's Giro d'Italia, Sean.
Yes, impressive. The first mountain stages really putting in great performances. Yesterday had a little bit of a difficult time, but you know, again today he seems to push it on there. But we can see Betancourt is immediately in his wheel, and we know the reason for that. For the young Jersey classmate, he's only a handful of seconds off him, and he's not going to allow him to ride away out of the main peloton of favourites. And we can see there in the group with Deluc, there's a lot of discussion going on who's going to do the pace setting. It looks like there could be a little bit of a headwind there, and that's the reason that, you know, looking at each other, everybody wants to everybody wants everybody to contribute. But of course there's a lot of riders there who will just try and sit and play the waiting game and try and get an easy ride as far up the hill as possible.
No easy rides up this hill of any sort, shape, description. This is a tough climb. Now they're see the shininess on the road. That indicates that well, the weather is closing in on the Galibier. Giovanni Visconti has taken the intermediate sprint. That's of little consequence at the moment. Christian Canese attempts to move up in the group. He's got Hainau safely ensconced in there now. It's Androni Giocattoli that are setting the pace on the front. Is that Rubiano that's been dragged back, and he's sitting on the front? And look at the scene, waiting for the riders at the top of the Galibier. Marco Pantani, his monument created in 2011 to honour the man that won the Tour de France and the Giro d'Italia in the same year, 1998. It's a different era for cycling. In many ways, a troubled man from a troubled era, but what an exciting talent he was, what an entertainer. And he's still fondly remembered throughout Italy and in the world of cycling. Karate of the Blanco team now strikes out for glory.
What's happening here? Was guessing out front, then Garati from the Blanco team goes in the attack out of the front of the peloton. There's riders you know, pulling on the front of the group here. We could see Androni as well, Rubiano Chavez, he was pulling along. So there's a lot of riders and a lot of teams pulling here, and I don't really understand the tactic why they're doing that at the moment.
Well, we haven't seen Gesick back in the group, or at least we haven't got confirmation of that, but I wonder if Robert Hessink and his group haven't been mopped up at this point. Let's wait for full clarification of that as we survey the scene, awaiting the riders, and still Giovanni Visconti ploughs on alone. A little look to the side to have a look at what awaits him at the next hairpin. been a long effort for him, but fine effort. 38 seconds to the riders chasing behind the three riders. Rabatini leads alone at this point, actually, and Stefano Perazzi and Peter Weening are working together at last. Weening just on the front ahead of Perazzi, and these riders attempting to get back to Matteo Rabatini, and Rabatini is ever so slightly inching back at the lead of Giovanni Visconti. So now within 40 seconds, but well, it's taking a long time to drag anything out of it. Now Group 2 on the road, 40 seconds in arrears. Is there still a Group 3?
Doesn't look the case. I think that group maybe of guessing was pulled back, and that's the reason we've seen that Garashi is trying to push on here. But
I think it was just at the moment that we saw I think it was Rubiano Chavez on the front of the main peloton. I think they'd probably just been dragged back at that moment. So now at the back of the peloton, hanging on. The peloton, such as it is, it's a very small group now. Chalapud, who is up the front for much of the afternoon. Hasn't worked out for Garate. Already a stage winner at Giro d'Italia. And already, and indeed still out front as he looks around. Perhaps it's been decided back in the team car that this is not one worth pursuing with. Vincenzo Nibali still enjoying the shelter of his teammates and other riders up front. Evans now choosing to ride ahead of him, sitting in 4th position in the peloton. Is Evans shaping up for an attack? You can be sure that Vincenzo Nibali won't let more than a couple of bike lengths. Wilco Kelderman, of course, has slipped further back in contention for the young rider classification in yesterday's stage, and is trying his chances. He's in 3rd position in the young rider. We've seen Rafael Maika try his luck to get ahead. That didn't work out. Rabatini still hanging on in front of Stefano Perazzi and Peter Weening, and they're within 10 seconds of him. Peter Weening grinding out that big gear. It's a smaller gear for Stefano Perazzi, but well, these riders are starting to suffer, and still they have almost 7.5 kilometers of climbing in the rain up towards the snows at the Pantani Monument at Les Granges du Galibier at the conclusion of stage 15 of the Giro d'Italia. These riders will get cold, and of course most of them have dispensed with their rain gear, but Visconti's kept the gloves on and kept the arm warmers. Some riders have kept arm warmers, other riders like Cadel Evans, sitting in 3rd in line here in the peloton, have decided to go without. I wonder, will that affect them closer to the top of the hill? It'll be tough to get them on at that point. There'll be no question of putting on any other gear.
No, I don't think there will be any opportunity to put on any gear, and you know, that's something as we go up, it's getting more and more colder, and the snow is coming down that bit heavier, and the riders who have got the bit more on, the arm warmers and the gloves, it will be important, and the ones who have stripped off totally, they will start to feel the cold as they get closer, and still with 7 kilometers to go, they can get very cold, but at least you're climbing, so you should be able to keep, the body will be warm, but if the temperatures really drop, it will affect some of the riders, certainly.
Super effort from Patrick Gretsch to still be in this group. His teammate with Team Argos Shimano also towards the back of this dwindling group. Thomas Damuso, he's the best placed of Team Argos in 64th position, and they're having a pretty good day. Still an awful lot of this climb left to try and survive in that group. You can be sure there'll be a lot fewer riders involved. Rabatini now, well, Visconti has actually managed to add 5 or 6 seconds to his total in the last little while, so Visconti is going very well indeed. Still 2.5 minutes to the good. Will it be enough? He's managing to maintain the gap. Lost a little bit to the Astana-led peloton in the last little while, but not a whole lot. Rabatini, though, Well, it could be starting to suffer a little bit. He's going for his pocket. His radio lead is all over the place, and the form perhaps is starting to dwindle for him. Visconti, though, pounding away at the pedals and still looking strong and full of fight.
Il ritardo di Rabottini, Matteo Rabottini nei confronti di Giovanni Visconti.
It's snowing at the finish on the Galibier. Giovanni Visconti has a little look behind, so perhaps the indication that he's feeling the pace now. Pozzovivo's just a little bit ahead of Danilo De Luca. De Luca has a little chat with Skinto, Director Sportive of the Vini Fantini squad. Does he have the legs for an attack? Does Visconti have the legs to hang on? He's getting out of the saddle to try and maintain momentum, and this is a really, really tough climb. This goes up in a relentless ramp. It's never less than, from now on, it's never less than 8%. It's lots of sections of 9 and 10%, and it gets up to 11% just before the top, which is the cruelest cut of all. Pozzovivo sitting at the back of that group is probably not the place to be.
Well, for the moment, it's not the place to be, but you can afford to do that because it's a group of 30-35 riders. So, you know, to move up on this climb, it's not going to be a difficult one. And we often see him sitting quite a long ways off in the earlier part of the climb. But again, you know, the question is he feeling the effects of, you know, the conditions again today, which you know, for so many days now, and you know, the group out front. With Visconti, the advantage he has over Rabottini, 53 seconds and 2:22 back to the peloton. It's not a great advantage, and if there is some attacks, and that is the question, I think that will decide if the riders out front will be able to hold on. If they continue on making this pace, and we see Agnoli still just setting a steady pace, and you know, nothing really urgency for him to do for the Astana team. But you know, is there other riders capable of doing the attacks? Because if they're thinking of stage victory, they can't wait for too long, otherwise, you know, this breakaways of riders out front, it's going to be a difficult one to close them down the final 3-4 kilometres. If you allow that 2-minute advantage, it can be difficult to do. But again, you know, Visconti's been out there for a long time. He's going to really struggle in the final of this one.
Well, I suggested that Matteo Rabottini was starting to really struggle. He has given up about 10 seconds to the race leader Giovanni Visconti within the last kilometre, but he in turn has extended his advantage over Peter Weening and Stefano Perazzi. But meanwhile, the peloton rides relentlessly onwards. You see Sutsu for Sky Pro Cycling goes to the front to set a tempo. Where is Rigoberto Urán? And when will he be coming to the fore? It can't be long now. Rafael Majka is right up there for Saxo Tinkoff. This the scene at the finish line on the Galibier. Epic weather for an epic stage. Oh, Visconti's really starting to suffer, but he's maintaining that advantage. It's a relatively big gear he's going for. Rabottini, though, he's starting to pull faces in a big way. Smaller gear for him. And he's pulled out his earpiece. He doesn't want to have anyone shouting at him. He knows what he's got to do. He's got to suffer. And he's just got to do what he can for another 5.5 kilometres. So who's going to crack first and who's going to attack first out of this group? Vincenzo Nibali still sitting very comfortable, surrounded by teammates, and it's his teammate Agnoli on the front that's setting the tempo. Pozzovivo now will be looking to move up. And now the attacks start from Euskaltel. Is that Sanchez? Samuel Sanchez has attacked the group of leaders, and he's watched by the Astana-led peloton, has a little look over his shoulder. Got a couple of riders for company, but Samuel Sanchez, who showed the first signs of decent form with his fourth place finish in yesterday's stage finish at Jaffro above Bardonecchia. Further down on the overall than perhaps he would like, but the man from Euskaltel, he talked in terms of stage success coming into this race, and that's his main target now. So he's more than a minute down at this point, though, more than 2 minutes down indeed on the leader, and Rabatini has slipped more than a minute behind Visconti up front. So Giovanni Visconti is riding well, and but his advantage over the peloton is shrinking with every passing metre. Samuel Sanchez slots into a rhythm, and he's been joined by Caruso of the Cannondale team. Damiano Caruso and Samuel Sanchez don't represent a big threat to Vincenzo Nibali's lead, so that's perhaps why they've been let off the leash for a little while.
Yes, I think you know, they're not danger men. Damian Caruso has 9:53, Sanchez at 8:24, so they will be allowed, you know, that little bit of lead out in front. And when he has riders there from Astana, Nibali, he will just allow them to continue making the pace, and if they can continue doing that, well, then they're not anybody going to take a huge advantage here. And so far they have it well under control, but it's when some of the other riders closer in general classification go on the attack, the better climbers, then we could see a reaction, but nobody seems to be capable of doing it for the moment. And we get to 4.5 kilometers in the finish, you know, it's time to do something now, because the advantage back to for our leader out in front, Visconti, back to Sanchez, is at 2:13. It is a lot to make up in the final 4 kilometers, unless, you know, somebody, a real good climber, goes in the attack out of the peloton.
Rabatini. Look at the scene at on the Galibier as everyone's fighting for whatever shelter they can get. Visconti fighting to maintain progress, and he's doing a great job over the other riders in the break today. No doubt about who's the strongest on this final climb. It is Giovanni Visconti now, 1 minute and 5 seconds ahead of Matteo Rabatini, who's seems unlikely at this point to add to his stage success from last year's Giro. He, though, in turn is managing to hang on ahead of Peter Weening and Stefano Pirazzi. Samuel Sanchez has looked over his shoulder as much as he has ahead, and Damiano Caruso seems content to sit in the wheel of the Spaniard. And those riders still with just a very narrow advantage over the Astana-led main group. So the Olympic champion from 2008 still likes to wear the super gold, super shiny shoes. Starting to hurt now for Vincenzo Nibali's help. And they're in the snow now. More attacks coming off the front. Duarte. Was it Duarte of Colombia? I think it might well be.
Yes, it looked like his style, and surprising there's nobody else you know, trying to get out of this group, because we can see Astana, they're just tapping out a pace that you know, they're not going to lose anything major on the groups out in front, and but not pushing on and to put you know, some of the other favourites in difficulty. That's not their interest at all. They're just going to keep on working, and the question is, you know, is Nibali maybe feeling a little bit of the effects that they seem to be just, you know, keeping a very easier pace, and I thought they would be upping that a bit more, but of course they're in the controlling position there, you know, with the race leader in their team. see the advantage he's got. There's no need to start chasing down anybody who's going in the attack at the moment, and just if he can do that, just continue on making a pace that other riders do not want to attack, well then that's the way to continue on and get as far into the stage, into the top of the mountain as possible.
Well, now the conditions are really starting to worsen, and Giovanni Visconti could look across and down the valley and see that 1 minute and 8 seconds advantage. Just shows what altitude these riders gain so quickly. These really are steep hills, and Matteo Rabatini now is fighting to hold off the riders behind, with Samuel Sanchez now with less than 2 minutes behind the stage leader Giovanni Visconti, as Astana continued to set the rhythm on the front, and Cadel Evans and co continued to watch. So no signs of any movement from Mauro Sant'Ambrogio, yesterday's stage winner. We're also watching for Cadel Evans to see, is he going to try his luck and try to get away from Vincenzo Nibali? Has he got what it takes? Rigoberto Urán too, currently at 3rd place overall, as Visconti hits 3 kilometers to go. Less than 2 minutes as his advantage, and he looks like he's really suffering out there. Still managing to put time into Rabatini and the rest, but the group of favourites is coming up. Now Stefano Perazzi and it looked like they've been joined by a rider from the Blanco team.
Yes, Kelderman, of course, we did see going in the attack, so he's probably still out there, so possibly made it across, and that's, you know, a good performance by him.
Well, the organisers weren't sure they were going to be able to give us a stage in the Alps today. They weren't sure what sort of roads they'd have for us, but it's been great that we've managed to have all but the last 4.25 kilometres of the pre-build stage length, and we're getting an absolutely grandstand finish on the Galibier to the conclusion of stage 15. Still waiting for big activity from the GC group. Rabatini fights on, but forlornly in terms of stage honours, you would say, unless there's going to be a big crack from Visconti. And Visconti in turn as well is now struggling to hold off these two men, because Samuel Sanchez is closing down that gap, and Sanchez is spending as much time looking over his shoulder as he is riding ahead. He's waiting for the big push. Here it comes. And no surprise that Visconti has decided to, well, it doesn't look like a full-blown attack, but it's a big gear that he's grinding out, and he's managed to open up a few bike lengths advantage, a few seconds advantage over Astana. Well, I do hope that guy brought a camper to the top of the hill. I hate to think he's in a tent. So Visconti steals a little look behind. The conditions starting to worsen. These riders will be starting to feel the cold despite the big efforts that they're making. Kelderman's on a good ride today. He's caught up to Stefano Perazzi. And Peter Weening has a little look over his shoulder. Weening desperately trying to hang on. Perazzi is cracked. And here comes Sanchez.
Sanchez, Caruso, and the riders everywhere at the moment, and we can see Visconti is, you know, battling on bravely here, and Rabottini also giving his everything, but not gaining anything, and you know, they're just hovering there a minute apart, and it's been like that for, you know, quite a number of kilometres now, and it looks like that Visconti, the way he is going at the moment as he comes to the 2 kilometres, if he can keep going as he has been the last 2 kilometres, well then he could hold on here, because nobody is really eating into anybody's advantage. We can see Sammy Sanchez, well, you know, he's walking away at it, but it's not coming down drastically quick.
Well, is there any chance that Giovanni Visconti could hang on? They've been out there since just after 50 kilometres to go, or 50 kilometres into the stage, and it would be an epic stage win if Giovanni Visconti can hang on. So now we see activity behind, and Haynau looks like he's struggling. Little look over the shoulder from Urán. Maybe he got the call on the radio to say that Haynau is getting dropped from this group. Urán looks to be sitting there comfortably on the wheel of Carlos Betancourt. Although, to be fair, I doubt any rider is feeling particularly comfortable. with these gradients and these weather conditions that they're facing. Visconti pushes on. Well, who dares to dream? Who would have thought that he'd have any chance when he started the climb of the Galibier, but he's kept plenty in hand. Wilco Kelderman, though, is going to be mopped up by the favourites group very, very shortly. Where is Samuel Sanchez and Caruso? Now the attacks come. Vincenzo Nibali has had enough. His patience has been tried, and his team have set the pace for long enough. And Vincenzo Nibali clearly feels very strong indeed, and he is attacked, and Giovanni Visconti is immediately all over that one, as indeed is Mauro Sant'Ambrogio. Cadel Evans grinds his way back onto the wheel, and Rigoberto Urán and in turn Carlos Betancourt are right there too. But the first signs of activity from the race leader as Vincenzo Nibali decides to take up the chase of these riders up front. Inside 2 kilometres, just over 1.5 kilometres for the race leader Visconti. Matteo Rabottini will be mopped up, you feel, before the end of this stage. 1 minute and 35 seconds the advantage for Visconti, and he's going to need all of that, and he may well need a little bit more that he doesn't have right now. Can Visconti hang on, and more importantly, can anyone distance Vincenzo Nibali, or in turn can Nibali distance his rivals? Kelderman, a brave effort, and doesn't look like it's going to work out for him today, because Rafael Maika is safely in there, so too is Carlos Betancourt. So in terms of the chase for the young riders classification, Kelderman hasn't gained any advantage at this point. Just Giovanni Visconti is really suffering, so too is Matteo Rabottini. And what scenes on the Galibier. It's an epic struggle on an epic mountain. 59 times it has played host to the Tour de France, but this is the first time that the Giro d'Italia has made it up, and it was well worth all the efforts with snowplows and explosives and whatever they did to clear the snow. As we see further activity, Rafael Maika is still full of fight. Betancourt, of course, needs to attack for GC and defend his position in the young riders classification, and Vincenzo Nibali looks to piggyback this little skirmish between the young riders contenders. Cadel Evans is alive to the danger in the red of BMC. Rabottini comes back to them. Visconti, though, hits the final kilometre under the kite. Can he possibly hang on? And this, as I said, the cruelest gradient of all comes within the last kilometre, 11%, Sean.
Yes, and he is really suffering, but again, we can see back in the main group of favourites, they're starting to look at each other, and we see Maika putting in an attack there, as we see one of the Colombian riders going here, and that's the advantage of Visconti. If they just look at each other for a moment, well then he should be able to hold on. As you see Durarte there having a go once again, but I think Visconti should be able to make it. The advantage he has, it looks like that he's going to hold on.
Duarte of Colombia tries his luck. Rabottini is almost back, looks over his shoulder, and he makes one last effort, and that is a valiant effort indeed from Rabottini. What a fighting performance from the Italian rider. Now Evans has a little go, but it's just a little bit of shadow boxing. Nibali is right on the wheel of the Australian. Betancourt has come out and he's decided to go for it. The man from AG2R attacks. Evans just watches, he's not able to respond. Maika, of course, has to for the young rider classification honours. And now the leading riders are inside the final kilometre, and they've 300 metres to try and chase down on this man up front, as he has been for so much of the afternoon. Giovanni Visconti racing on towards glory. Can he possibly hang on? He steals a little look over his shoulder, but he hasn't got time for that. And the visibility is so low at this point, he'll barely see anything, even if he could. Betancourt slows to a crawl. Duarte presses on, Maika as well. These three riders with a narrow advantage over Vincenzo Nibali, who doesn't seem all that concerned. Best placed of them, of course, is Rafael Maika at the outskirts of the top 10. Scarponi side by side with Nibali. Scarponi of Lampre Merida in pink, and Nibali of the more important Maglia Rosa pink, riding for the Astana team. Duarte sets the pace inside the final 700 metres, but look at this man. Giovanni Visconti has made it to the finishing cameras. He's made it inside the last 350 metres, and it looks as if he's going to make it to score a famous victory in the Giro d'Italia as the favourites group continue to eye each other. And so far they've fought out a draw. Is there a final sting in the tail? Visconti, though, needs to keep fighting all the way to the line. You can't freewheel on these gradients.
Inside 250 to go, and we can see the advantage he's got. Betancourt will be the danger one because he can finish very strong, but we can see there's quite a nice advantage all the time, and Visconti on the way to taking the victory.
Yeah, he's got a couple of 100 metres in hand. He's inside the final 150 metres. He'll ride it all the way to the line. He certainly has to do that, but it's looking good for Giovanni Visconti, who led the mountains classification early in this race, but that was just a minor thing compared to this. A wonderful stage success for the Spaniard as he heads towards glory on stage 15 of the Giro d'Italia. He lifts the zip as much to show the sponsors' colours, but I suspect also to try and keep him warm. Meanwhile, what's happening behind as Betancourt and co do battle? But Giovanni it is that Giovanni Visconti takes victory in stage 15 of the Giro d'Italia of 2013, and he's absolutely exhausted after a titanic effort and hung out there in front when so many, including myself, doubted him. What an excellent effort as the favourites group scrapping hard. Vincenzo Nibali with Cadel Evans, Sant'Ambrosio et al. for company. Betancourt at the back of this group. Rafael Majka shapes to attack towards the line.
And Majka and Betancourt, of course, are going to fight out this one because the time difference in the Young Jersey Classement is very important because it's only 7 seconds separation. So if Betancourt can take this one, then he will move into the Young Jersey Classement.
Well, Betancourt it is that does finish second on the stage and take those all-important bonus seconds, and with it the jersey. But Scarponi leads the rest of the favourites across the line. Vincenzo Nibali safely in his wheel. So too is Cadel Evans, Mauro Sant'Ambrosio, Rigoberto Urán, and I think Kieselowski was in there as well. But they were the minor players, really, to a wonderful solo stage performance by Giovanni Visconti today. Danilo De Luca rides in solo. Delighted to have ended the pain and suffering today, but disappointed that he wasn't able to get in amongst them. And they're coming in dribs and drabs, and they'll be hoping to get to shelter as quickly as possible. Only one team car from each team allowed up this hill. Yeah, Pozzovivo's lost time. That's significant. So not a good stage for Domenico Pozzovivo, perhaps suffering in the cold. But what about Giovanni Visconti? Superb effort from him. And Sean, the leading riders really did fight out a bit of a draw. Vincenzo Nibali shaped to attack, but the other riders were equal to it, and well, they didn't have anything for an attack from themselves after that.
You know, we see this pace being all the time set on the climb by Astana team, and Nibali was just happy with that. He did not need to attack, and we did see that he just put in a little bit of a one when Scarponi, I think, went in the attack. But none of the big favourites really, you know, looked like they were going to challenge the Astana and Nibali on that final climb.
So there's confirmation of the stage results with Giovanni Visconti taking a famous solo victory on the Galibier ahead of Betancourt by 42 seconds. Nimic is in there too. Rafael Majka fourth, but no bonus seconds. And Duarte, great effort from him for the Colombian team. Michele Scarponi leads Vincenzo Nibali across the line, but doesn't gain any time. Cadel Evans and Sant'Ambrosio and Urán are all safely accompanying Nibali across the line, but the man up front in the snows in front of the Marco Pantani monument, Giovanni Visconti, now 30 years of age. He won the Tour of Turkey in 2010. He's taken a number of other victories in his career, but This Italian rider absolutely thrilled to have taken a victory in France, but in his home Grand Tour. And Betancourt comfortably able to sprint in ahead of the rest of his companions to take the vital 12 seconds on offer, so he's now 5 seconds to the good. In the young rider classification, Scarponi looks over his shoulder to see the pink shadow of Vincenzo Nibali. And the pain is etched on Cadel Evans' face as well. Tough day in the Alps for these riders today.
Yes, we can see everybody coming in there. We can see Visconti, you know, he's the markings of a hard day, and we could see Cadel Evans and the rest of the favourites, Scarponi, all of those riders suffering big time here on the final climb, although they only got it on the uphill, and that was I thought was a good point, because if they had gotten the valley, well, then there'd be a lot of these riders be frozen before the climb. At least they will keep some bit warm on the climb itself, but still real challenging conditions.
One or two tweets coming in pointing out that Domenico Pozzovivo had crashed on the Telegraph Hill, and we did see him, of course, trying to make his way back, and he got back onto the back of the group, so it was a long suffering day for him, and by the time he got on the back of the group for the Galibier, he was probably already
cooked.
Already being Visconti taking victory. Apparently the energy to raise his arms, I think, at that point. What an effort. Suitably, given it's in front of the Marco Pantani monument, it's, I think, suitable that we had a solo winner from such a long way out. This is the point on the Galibier that Pantani attacked to set up his victory in the 1998 Tour de France. The overall standings, Vincenzo Nibali maintains that advantage of 1 minute and 26 seconds from Cadel Evans. Rigoberto Urán still 2:46 behind Sant'Ambrogio, and Scarponi haven't lost any time. Nimic there too. So Nimic, Betancourt, Maika gain a little bit of time. Pozzovivo loses a little bit of time. Beñat-Inchausti, 10th overall, 6 minutes and 21 seconds in arrears. Vincenzo Nibali, though, has survived another dangerous stage for him in his attack for a first victory in Giro d'Italia.